Welcome to Outlook Money's interview series Wealth Wizards, where you'll find money maestros in conversation with me, Nidhi Sinha, editor Outlook Money. In this series, I speak to experts you've always wanted to listen to. We talk about their work and lives and try to understand what makes them tick. Today's guest is a different kind of wealth wizard. He's researched widely on the secret of a long life in areas he calls the blue zones and has done successful experiments in the US to create such communities anew. Please welcome Dan Buettner. He's the Blue Zones founder, National Geographic Fellow, best-selling author, and the producer of the Emmy Award-winning Live to 100 Secrets of the Blue Zone Netflix series. I'll start with the questions right away. Could you first explain the concept of blue zones to the uninitiated?
So only about 20% of how long we live is dictated by our genes. 80% is something else. So working with National Geographic and a team of demographers, we identified 5 parts of the world where people live statistically longest, and then spent 3 years validating their ages, their birth records, and their death records. And then discovered these places are home to people who live about 10 years longer than the rest of us. And much of my work has been trying to understand the factors or the correlates, the characteristics that seem to be accompanying longevity in all 5 of these places and the lessons we learn from them. And I've written 5 New York Times bestsellers. They're all called Blue Zones in one way or another.
So, what is it that got you interested in the area of blue zones? Is there a personal story that you would like to share behind pursuing these havens of longevity?
I was an explorer, and my specialty was unraveling scientific mysteries. And in the year 2000, I read a World Health Organization study that showed that Okinawa was producing the longest disease-free population in the world. And I thought, now that's a good mystery. And we started with Okinawa, and I reasoned if there were long-lived people in Asia, there must be long-lived people in Europe and South America and North America and maybe even Africa. So that began this 25-year-long journey, which has taken me to today.
So, all these blue zones have been, identified by you?
Well, no, not all of them. Sardinia was identified by a team, Michel Poulin and Gianni Pes. Makoto Suzuki found Okinawa, but I was sort of the symphony leader, the team leader for Icaria, Greece, and the Nicoya Peninsula of Costa Rica. We got National Geographic grants to confirm the ages there.
Okay.
And then I named Loma Linda, California, a blue zone in the United States because people there were living about 7 years longer than their North American counterparts. So I'm responsible for the worldwide name, but it's a team of scientists, a really rather large team of scientists who are responsible for the demography and the age verification.
So, during your research, what were your main observations on what supports longevity? How are these observations different from popular notions about longevity, according to you?
Big thing first, and you guys are money outlooks, so you understand economics, and specifically behavioral economics. We are deluded largely by marketers to think that there is some pill or supplement or longevity hack or superfood or exercise program that's going to make us live longer. There's not. If trying to change your behavior or your habits fails for almost all people, almost all the time. They're good business plans because every year we can get people signing up for diets and supplements and exercise programs, and every year they fail, in about a month. What works in blue zones is an environment that sets up nudges and defaults that govern people's unconscious decisions. We all know that eating mostly a whole food plant-based diet is going to help us live longer. Kerala in India is very good at that. We all know that moving our body is going to help us live longer, of staying socially connected, of having a sense of purpose, of avoiding toxins, These are all environmental factors, and we completely get it wrong when we pursue health. The big contribution that Blue Zones offers the world is that longevity ensues. It flows from producing the right environment. So we should not be spending too many resources and times on behavior modification. We should be spending it on environment modification. That produces longevity.
Okay, I come from a finance background, and one of my questions, which we also have been kind of looking at while we cover retirement, is how does this population take care of their finances? They are 100 plus. I'm sure they may not be in regular jobs at that age. So, is there some kind of social security or pension fund they fall back on, especially in the areas that you have researched?
Counterintuitively, most of the blue zones are the poorest regions of the countries they inhabit. They
Okay.
do benefit from very good public health. And in most cases, it's better public health than we have in the United States. They do have very small pensions. But what they have that we've lost, it's the support from families. They almost always live in extended families. They almost always supplement what they need to buy by having a garden. They live in communities that don't require a car and the enormous expense of owning and maintaining a car. So most of us are deluded in thinking that the answer for living longer and living longer well lies wholly in some rich social security system. It lies in paying attention to the rhythms and how the traditional mechanisms that got the human race to where it was 2 generations ago, and paying attention to surrounding yourself with people who are going to care about you, living in walkable communities. And by the way, the cheapest and most accessible foods and healthiest foods are peasant foods. It's not tomahawk steak or seafood or some fancy superfood. It's beans. It's rice. It's tubers, but sweet potatoes. It's just things that, I mean, India does this particularly good job. It's making use of these wonderful spices. And we know those are healthy. Those are cheap. A lot of times, a lot of them grow wild in a vacant lot. And it's just shifting the focus away from, okay, we got to make more money, to how do we shape our surroundings beginning at age 20, both social and physical. So we unconsciously are making the right decision in our life, and we hit our 80s and our 90s surrounded by supportive friends and family. That's the secret.
Okay, so a very simple life, which is, which doesn't involve a lot of cost. And a lot of, when I was watching your series, I also saw a lot of communities working in old age. I mean, different kinds of work maybe, but all of that maybe comes together. But you were talking about India, and I have a question regarding India, in fact. Though the younger generation may be now different in the urban area, especially, a lot of people in India, have physical work embedded in their lifestyle, like the community in Okinawa, perhaps. And the sense of community is also pretty strong still. So, yet we do not have a blue zone in India, as far as I know. So, why do you think that is so, and what can India do differently to kind of get there?
Well, most of the world up to about 80 years ago died because of infectious disease, malaria, cholera, pneumonia, dysentery, diarrhea. The blue zones have the benefit of public health. They're not dying from those infectious diseases because of the steps their governments have taken. And they don't quite yet die of chronic diseases, which is killing most of America, which are your standard American diet and the physical inactivity and loneliness, etc. India has the bones, has the foundation of a blue zone. You're very social. You have a phenomenal diet. You know how to make very cheap food taste delicious, better than I would say most countries on earth. But you have a big infectious disease problem, much bigger than the other blue zones. In other words, people are dying from diseases of sanitation or lack of sanitation and perhaps overcrowding in some cases. So anyway,
So,
it's a blue zone in the making. Let's put it that way.
okay, but so do you think that a government push will really help in in something making something like this or moving towards a future like that?
Yes, policy is usually the most effective, cost-effective tool there is
Hmm.
at public health. Now, I don't know intimately the
Hmm.
way, if the government really had a priority on making people healthy, it would look at what is foreshortening people's life. There's a project called the Global Burden of Disease. And
Hmm.
that project, you can look it up. You can look at IHME is the website, IHME, and you
Okay.
can look at what is foreshortening the lives of people in India. And once you know that, then you can attack the specific ailments. I'm guessing it's, for the most part, heart attacks on the chronic disease and probably diseases of lack of sanitation on the infectious side. So then the policy workers go to work at mitigating those problems, but it's going to be largely an environmental issue. It's going to be largely limiting access to cigarettes and junk food on the
Hmm.
non-infectious disease side, and it's going to be spending more money making sure there's clean water sources, and making sure there's vaccinations and antibiotics for the infectious disease sides.
Okay, so what I'm taking is that a lot of policy action on different things can really make a large difference. But another question that I had that, when I was looking at your work is that these communities that you describe, they are either living on a mountainous village or maybe, they have enough space for activities like gardening. Now, even in India, there is a lot of overcrowding, like you said, and urban spaces are becoming smaller. So for these kind of people, and there is no environment, so to say, in terms of policy or other things, are gyms really the answer for them in the absence of natural solutions?
You know, the No, gyms are not. It's walkability. It's taxing gasoline, having congestion control schemes where people have to pay tolls. The most effective thing you can do is get people out from behind their steering wheel onto their feet. And the best model of that in the world is Singapore. Singapore has much higher population density than India has, believe it or not. So if the Indian government really cared about people's health, it would pay particular attention to Singapore. Singapore currently has the highest health adjusted life expectancy in the world. And they do it with a heterogeneous population. So it's a melting pot,
Mm.
several religions, just like India. It started out as a very poor place, like parts of India. And they have systematically passed policy that favors human health. They pay attention, of course, to financial and economic prosperity, but we have this great fallacy that increasing GDP is going to fix everything. It's not.
Mm.
In fact, I would argue for a government, the best investment they could make right now is addressing health, because if you have healthy children, they grow up to be more educated. There's much less of an economic toll on the family. The mothers have more free time to focus on raising children, and you get healthier, more productive workforce. So governments are often influenced by private interests that take away the focus, but best focus for first investment for a government is getting the population optimally healthy.
Absolutely agree with this. You have actually experimented with certain areas in the US to kind of make them into blue zones. How has that experience been, and how scalable is it according to you?
It's more than an experiment. We've been doing it for 15 years, and we've been in
Okay.
70 cities. In
Hmm.
every city we've worked in, we've seen measurable improvement. We measure BMI and life satisfaction,
Hmm.
and they're called Blue Zone projects or transformation projects. And they're funded by insurance companies and hospital systems and supported by local governments. And what we do is we change policy to favor the non-smoker over the smoker, and to favor the pedestrian over the motorist, and to favor the healthy foods over junk food and junk food marketing. And then we go through and we, for businesses and schools and restaurants and workplaces, we offer Blue Zone certification if those people change their designs and their policies so that people unconsciously are moving more, eating better, socializing more. And it requires a mind shift than most of these healthy city projects that try to get people doing fun runs and eating their veggies. They always fail. But when you reshape a city's policy and its streets, and you reshape the places that people live in so that they're unconsciously making a better decision for a decade, every time we see BMI go down, life expectancy go up, and healthcare go down, and that's how we make our money.
That's great. But are you also planning to, or maybe you are already doing it beyond the US, or is it just your work is right now focused on the US?
Right now we're just focused on the United States.
But are there any plans to kind of go into the South Americas, perhaps, or other places?
A lot of people misunderstand. The only way you can do this is a 5-year commitment. In a city of 1 million people, I need 20 to 25 full-time employees, 5 years. And when people, they hear about Blue Zones, oh, we want to be a Blue Zones, but they don't really want to do the work. They just want the label.
Okay.
You can do the math, how much that would cost. 25 employees, they need an office, they need retirement plans, they need vacation, they need training. And it's a big ticket. But when you compare the cost of keeping people healthy to the cost of caring for them after they're sick, it's a bargain. We spend 4.4 trillion US dollars a year on trying and clean up the mess here in America of unhealthy people. You get about a 20x return when you consider productivity and a loss of years of work years and the cost of treating these people. It's about 20 times cheaper to keep people healthy than it is to pay for them when they're sick. So, but that's not the way the American healthcare system is set up. So we're kind of swimming upstream on these things, but we've shown it's successful and it's infinitely scalable. If we took 1/100th of what we spend on pharmaceuticals in this country, I could work in every city in America, and you'd see the obesity rate go down, and you'd see trillions of savings in healthcare and related productivity and absenteeism costs.
So can such an experiment be a reality in India, according to you, from whatever you have known about India?
It's possible, but again, give me a city that you'd be interested in seeing become a Blue Zone.
Let me pick up Lucknow,
And how
and
many people live there?
it's a semi metropolis, and it's a tier 2 city. Has a lot of scope. It's expanding, but I also feel that it might have scope to be converted into something else, because it's very rich in culture. The whole Nawab culture and Awadh culture resides there, and it has scope to expand, and it's not as crowded as perhaps bigger cities like Delhi and Kolkata.
Okay, so here's what it would take. I would have to bring a team there, and I would have to meet all of the local leaders, the mayor, the religious leaders, the people who are in charge. And I'd have to say, we're coming in with this unique approach. We're changing the environment, not trying to change people's behavior. Is this something that interests you? So I need a yes from that. And then I'd say, okay, this is what's required of you, Mr. Politician. You need to help me. I'm going to show you the ordinance and the laws local that are going to make a difference. Are you willing to expend your political capital? Yes or no? The answer to that is yes. With the head of schools and the big businesses. Then I need to hire probably 30 people, and I need a manager, and I need a budget for that. So somebody's got to pay for that. I don't know who's going to pay for that, but in America, we can get health insurance companies or hospital systems.
Okay.
Maybe the Indian government would pay for it. I don't know, but I need a lot of money to hire these people for 5 years. And yes, I could bend the curve. I could reduce obesity. I could reduce heart attacks, type 2 diabetes. I could probably reduce diseases of pollution, but I have a process, and it's expensive, and it's long, and it requires a different way of thinking.
Okay. So, one last question to you. You've also mentioned somewhere that, the blue zones that you have already been to and worked with are somewhere shrinking. So why do you think that is so? And what can be the way forward to kind of, retain that culture of, say, walking, or, that maintaining the environment that is built or which is natural to a place?
I think all of the blue zones are disappearing, every one of them, and they're disappearing because, and I've seen it just in the 20 years I've been visiting them. What happens is they start importing cars. Cars are big killers. They pollute the air. They cause accidents, and they engineer physical activity out of people's lives. Number two, the standard American culture is coming. McDonald's, Burger King, Doritos, ultra processed food. That destroys health, and I don't know how to stop that. And people are spending more time on their handheld devices, and they're not socializing and not building the relationships. So I'm more interested. I'm writing another book right now for National Geographic on places in the world where they were unhealthy, and they're starting to change the trend. And there's several places where people live about 12 years longer, 12 good years longer than we do in the United States. We're a rich country here. And there's other places that live 12 years longer, and the pattern is very discernible. And that's the future, not trying to save the old blue zones,
Okay.
but focusing on the new blue zones.
Thank you so much, Mr. Buettner, for this interview, and looking forward to more blue zones in the world and moving towards a healthy life. Thanks a lot.
If people have more questions, I'm at Dan Buettner on Instagram, and I answer people's questions, and danbuettner.com for more information. And it was a joy to meet you, and nice to address India.
Yeah, that was very interesting. So look forward to meeting you on social media next.